It's raining cats and dogs. Learning English is a piece of cake. What is an idiom? Every language has its unique collection of sayings and phrases. These expressions, known as idioms, often contain meanings that may not be obvious by simply looking at the individual words. An idiom is a widely used saying or expression containing a figurative meaning that differs from the phrase's literal meaning. The word idiom comes from the Greek word idioma, meaning peculiar phrasing. For example, under the weather is an idiom universally understood to mean sick or ill. If you say you're feeling under the weather, you don't literally mean that you're standing underneath the rain. Idioms often summarize or reflect a commonly held cultural experience, even if that experience is now out of date or antiquated. For instance, you might say that someone should bite the bullet when they need to do something undesirable. The phrase's origin refers to wounded soldiers literally biting down on a bullet to avoid screaming during a wartime operation. That common occurrence from the past resulted in a phrase we still use today. These phrases are also unique to their language of origin. In other words, English idioms are different from Spanish or French idioms. People who struggle with idioms often can't see the forest for the trees, which is itself an idiom used to describe someone who is too involved with the details of a situation that can't see the bigger picture at hand. It doesn't involve any forests or trees. To understand idioms is to see the forest for the trees, or to look at the phrase as a whole rather than focusing on the individual words. Generally speaking, there are four types of idioms. Number one is pure idiom. This is your typical idiom, the meaning of which can't be deduced by its individual components. When someone says, spill the beans, they're asking someone to reveal a secret, not to pour out a can of beans. But you wouldn't know that by looking at each word of that phrase. Number two, binomial idiom. This idiom is a phrase that contains two words joined by a conjunction or a preposition. Some examples include by and large. It means everything considered. Do's and don'ts. Guidelines on what to do and or avoid in a certain situation. For example, heart to heart. A candid conversation between two people. 3. Partial idiom. This idiom is one that's been shortened into one part, with the second part generally being understood by fluent speakers. People often use the partial idiom when in Rome, with the understanding that the other person knows the second part. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Number 4. Prepositional idiom. This idiom is a phrase that combines a verb and a preposition to create a verb with a distinct meaning. The phrase agree on is a prepositional idiom that combines the verb agree with the preposition on and is used to express that you share an opinion with someone. When are idioms used? A speaker or writer often uses idioms to convey a message to someone else in a more creative way. Think of them as a type of a spice that prevents your conversation or writing from being too bland. So instead of saying, "You're correct," several times, you might throw in, "You hit the nail on the head," or even, "Bingo," for a little variety. Why are idioms challenging for language learners? Idioms are challenging for language learners because their meanings can't be deciphered from the meanings of the individual words. It's like giving someone a jigsaw puzzle containing pieces that look like one thing, only for the finished product to be something else entirely. But as we mentioned before, that's also true of people from different parts of the same country who speak the same language. Because there are no steadfast rules for idioms, the only way for language learners to become familiar with them is to speak with native speakers and have them explained. Idiom versus cliché. A cliché can be an idiom, but an idiom is not always a cliché. Clichés are expressions or phrases that are overused to the point where they lose their meaning and indicate a lack of original thought. For example, there are few people who feel better when they hear this after a breakup. Don't worry, there are plenty of fish in the sea. That phrase has been used so often that it fails to have any impact. Idiom versus proverb. A proverb is similar to an idiom in that its meaning can't be deciphered by looking at the individual words. But it's different because it's used to give advice to someone else. If someone says, "Don't cry over spilled milk," they're telling the other person not to worry about something that has already happened. The phrase doesn't mean someone is crying and has nothing to do with dairy. So once again, a proverb can be an idiom, but an idiom is not always a proverb. Here are some common idioms in the English language, along with their meaning.
Under the weather. Meaning, not feeling well.
Break a leg. Meaning, to wish someone good luck.
Once in a blue moon. Meaning, rarely.
The ball is in your court. Meaning, a decision is up to you.
You can say that again. Meaning, that is true.
Hit the sack. Meaning, to go to bed.
Kick the bucket. Meaning, to die.
By the skin of your teeth. Meaning, barely made it.
Thank you for watching this video. If you know any other practical idioms, comment it down below so that other learners can use it too. See you soon.